Hey class, I want to create another video, but this video is going to be a bit different than the ones before. The ones before I typically provide specific instructions and specific how-tos. But in this video, I want to cover a little bit on logic with the coding and more or less have you start thinking of trying to capture every possible little condition and meet those. Because what's going to happen is you're going to create a program and you're going to have to initially think that based on the value that I'm looking for, what is the output that I want? But also, what's the best way to put this, and what happens if that input doesn't meet the criteria that I've asked for? So you notice on this comment below it says you should always use a default condition to catch anything someone provides not in the scope of the code. Now I'm going to go back to the catching anything in a little bit, but the scope of the code. Scope may be a word that you're not familiar with, but by definition a scope is providing the detail. So in project management it's used a lot because what is the scope of the project? What is it that we are actually trying to do? So think of it as this: the scope is nothing more than the specific task or goal that we are attempting to accomplish. And that can be as detailed as you want or not. And this is basically also a provision of expectations. And sometimes you may even see a column of this is what's in scope, meaning we want to get all of these, and this is not in scope, meaning we're not even going to deal with that. We're not working on that. We're not bothering with it. So the scope is basically a detailed expectation. That's partially why I also want you to put comments on the top of your code, because I need to know what is this for, who you are, when did you create it, and typically a little description of what you're trying to accomplish. Now for us right now it's just assignment 1, assignment 2, identifying what we're attempting to do. But that's what scope of the code means. It's just a detail of the code, what we're trying to accomplish. So that being said, let's look at this. So in our scenario for this example, let's imagine that we have a input function and we're asking the user to value 1 to 100. So we're expecting the number between 1 to 100. And we can use our math operators in Python, our greater than, less than, and our equal for our syntax. So in this code, we have a value of 25. So the user values 25 and it's into our variable of a. Now we've already covered variables and we're touching on if-else-if conditions because we're going to take that value, we're going to compare it to something, and if it's true, meaning that it does fit that condition, then I want an output of some kind. So here it looks like we have a value of 25, and if that 25 equal to 100, then I'm going to print out this hit at 100. If not, it's going to go to the next line of code, check this condition. If it's greater than or equal to 51, then I want to say, hey, this hit between 51 to 99. We've already met 100 if it hits. So now we're looking at a range of 51 to 99. And notice too that I did put 50 here because I don't want it to hit on 50. I just want it to check above 50 to 99. If it does not, it hit the next condition statement and it's going to look specifically if this value is 50. If so, it hits exactly at 50. And our last statement, or, meaning it's not 50, it's not 100, it's not 51 through 99, so it has to be below 50. So whatever value that is, it's going to be below 50. Now this already has errors I'm expecting, but that's also for the purpose of the video, because I bet you recognize now as you're writing this code, you're going to have to deal with errors and fix those errors. And that is the major part of this piece of writing code. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens first and see how we can address it. Right off the bat, we're giving an error, and it's saying it's a type error, and it's saying this operator, this condition, is not supported between an integer and a string. Oh, and if you recall in the week for your data types, so this is a numeric or integer value as a variable of a, but it's comparing it to strings. Since I have quotes around here, Python believes this is a string and this is a integer, so it doesn't understand. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove our quotes out of here, and now we're going to truly compare an integer to an integer and then see if we can meet our conditions. So let's rerun this and see. Okay, this hit below 50. All right, great. All right, so 25 is definitely not 100, so it's skipped. It is not more than or equal to 51, so it's skipped. It's not 50, so it did hit our last one. This hit below 50. So now we have met one of our conditions. So this one has been validated at this point. So we need to still test these three. So in order to do that, I want to make a value that's going to fit within this condition. So this time, let's see if it does a 50. The expectation is it's going to pass this one, and hit on here. But let's find out. We need to validate it. This hit exactly at 50. All right, great. So it hits this condition. It's as we expected. So these two are now completed and validated. So let's move on, and we got to test the other logics. So this one will do 75. It should be within the range of 51 to 99. So let's go ahead and test it. And then we do. We hit between 51 to 99. So now all these have been validated. So let's do our last one here at 100. Run module, and yes, it hit at 100. All right, now we have validated every one of these conditions, and when these do indeed work based upon the input. Now, let's go back to what I originally was saying. You should always use a default condition to catch anything someone provides not in scope. All right. So what does that mean? We've asked them to value 1 to 100. But what happens if we actually value 150? Logically, it's not going to be equal to 100. But let's find out what happens. Hit between 51 to 99. That's not accurate. And why did it hit this second condition anyway? Well, let's think about it. The number 150, we know it's not equal to 100, so that makes sense why it missed this. But this, if you notice, greater than or equal to 51. Well, 150 is a value that is indeed greater than 51, and this is why it hit. But it's not accurate based on our output. So this is what I mean by you have to have something to catch anything on, because you know as well as I, if somebody's going to put in a bad value or garbage, most likely they will. So our code has to catch everything. And this is why you want at least some default condition to catch those things that are not in the parameter of what we're asking for. So now that we've found a flaw in our code, we have to try to figure out logically what can we do to resolve it. Well, we can't really add code on bottom because we've already determined if it's 150, it's going to hit this, and that's inaccurate. So what we could do is we could try to hit a value or check the value before we go through all the detail conditions. This will do two things. This will immediately check if indeed it's a valid value that we're expecting, and it will also save time and be more efficient because we don't have to check through multiple lines of code, and we can immediately address it. So let's try this. I'm going to change this to another else statement because I want to know these things are true. We do know that this works if it falls in those parameters, but I need to check if this is more than what we are expecting. So I could say if it is more than 100, then I want to print your value does not fall in the proper range. Alright, now this should address any values above 100 and give us a proper output to explain what's going on. But as always, we got to test it. So we got to run module. Let's test it, see what happens. Hey, look, your value does not fall in the proper range. So we've addressed any numbers above 100. We have conditional logic for all those numbers between 100 down below. So now that we've addressed this, we can feel more comfortable with catching anything that we're not expecting, and it will not make our code poor. Now, one more thing I want to mention before I end this video. Technically, the user could also put in a non-integer. They could put in a string if they wanted to. And what will happen is we're going back to our original error, and where it is not supporting an instance between an integer and a string. And it's going to error out once again. Now this course is not going to cover that because we're not there yet. There's multiple ways that you can fix it, all based upon your knowledge and how you can address it. But again, for this video, I want you to start thinking about the logic of your code and how to try to address all of the possible values within the range that we're asking the user to put in. So I hope this helps.